Let's begin with some facts. You probably heard of fonts, font families, and typefaces, but what's the difference though? First, typeface is the big one, such as Impact or Times New Roman, the one I use on my scripts, and it's followed by the font family. This covers the general variations such as bold and italic. Then we get to the font. The font is basically the end product, which includes all the other parameters like weight, width, and size. Oh, and the symbols in the typeface are referred to as glyphs. But, does it really have to be this complicated? I withdraw my question. So on a scale of typefaced fonts, what I'm gonna be making in this video falls somewhere between typeface and font family. Which technically makes the title a clickbait. I just hope I don't go to Helvetica for my comic sins. Now here's the second sin we're gonna commit. We'll be working with bitmap or raster typefaces. Modern digital fonts mostly use vector typefaces where the glyphs are made of points and curves that connect them. This makes them scalable, and that's why they don't look pixelated no matter how much you zoom in. And then there are bitmap or raster fonts. These are closer to just images where every character is made of dots or pixels. This kind of typeface is better for something like a pixel art font because that's basically what it is. Now if you're interested in fonts and still haven't watched these, here's a couple of videos I recommend. First and foremost, we need a font. Sorry, typeface, old habits die hard. Here's the font I made for my game back in 2022. I made two versions, one bigger and one smaller, in order to minimize how much they get rescaled in the game. Upscaled small fonts can be too pixelated, and downscaled large fonts can just look bad. This is one of the problems with raster typefaces, but they can be easier to work with in other ways. Now I don't think I'm the best font designer in the world, so I'm gonna keep this part short. In fonts you're gonna find some of these lines. The baseline is the bottom point of characters without lower extensions or descenders. The mean line is generally the height of lowercase letters. The distance between the baseline and the mean line is also called the X height. The last important one is the top line or the cap line, which is the top of uppercase letters. Now I, with my limited knowledge of the field, would like to introduce a brand new concept to the ancient art of typography, called the T-height. The T-height is an arbitrary height picked by the font designer, which is the height of the middle lines in characters, also known as the crossbar. Now that one isn't made up, but the T-height is something I use when making this font, and I couldn't find any accepted terms for a standardized crossbar height. If you know the correct term for this, please let me know. Besides height though, fonts are also divided into two categories based on their width. There are proportional fonts where, for example, the letter M is wider than the letter I. The other kind is the one I like using when I'm on a spaceship. Yeah, the second kind is monospaced, which means all the letters are the same width. This kind of font is great for code or the text on a technical console as they're easy to align, which explains the spaceship joke. Now Gamemaker, the engine I'm using, lets you turn a set of images into a bitmap font. But it does just that. It turns the images into a set of characters or glyphs. It doesn't give you italic or bold versions automatically. There are two ways for creating different font families for a typeface: true and faux. True bold and true italic means a new variation of the typeface will be created with these modifications in mind. But a faux bold or a faux italic font isn't made with such love and care, because it's more like an effect that is applied to the font afterwards. Now what I'm gonna do here falls under this category because the other kind doesn't require a convoluted solution. So remember how we can turn these images into glyphs? Now the idea is, we can generate new images for this new font. We're gonna do this by staircasing the original image. I just made that term up. Basically I mean we need to slice up the image and draw each slice slightly further than the last. This is what we want, but this is not an image right now, it's just what we drew on the screen. We need it to be an image. This part is slightly technical. In Gamemaker we have surfaces, which are basically like canvases you can draw on. You can turn these surfaces into images afterwards. So we need to create a surface, but it has to be the right size. The height is the same and the width is initial width plus the weight of slant times height. But the weight of slants? What is that? Well, that's basically how much the slices will be pushed on each step of the staircase. Now let's apply this to the fonts. With fonts, if we set it to 1 again, the 45-degree slant is a bit too much. So the default is 0.25 here, which is a good balance. Also the slant is flawed because we're working at pixel level. This whole process is done for every character. Now that we have drawn the new character, we can turn it into an image, turn that into a font, and we're done, right? Well, if you skip QA, then yes. Otherwise we have a problem. See, when we turn a set of images into a font, we have a separation value. This is the distance between each character. So 0 would mean all characters are touching. But because we made new characters with slightly bigger images, the same value doesn't work here. It's still quite simple though, we just need to take the separation value and subtract this with W. Now 0 separation is equal to minus W or whatever it is, so the characters are touching. And finally we got the result we wanted. And I gotta say I'm quite fond of it. I know, these puns are getting kinda bold. Speaking of which, where's the bold font? It's here, don't worry, it's just a lot less exciting. For bold, we follow a similar process. Create a surface, this time the size is the original width and height plus the boldness amount, times 2. The default is 1. This also means we need to update the character separation again, but it's much simpler this time. We just need to add boldness times 2 to the separation value. The easiest way to achieve the effect is to have the original character in the middle, and also draw the same character around the center in a circle, basically like applying lipstick. Just imagine if the brush was the shape of each character in the alphabet one by one. The bold font is kinda cool though, since you can use it to create a makeshift outline effect, simply by drawing the same text in bold followed by regular. Of course, this ignores the altered separation of the characters. Some other effects like underline or strike through are best done externally since they don't modify the font itself. And there we have it. Probably one of the most obscure ways of creating your fonts. Now this is obviously a fairly limited use case, being made for a specific game engine, but the process was interesting and I just hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a type.